The intriguing stories from India's lengthy history have attracted interest on a global scale, but one of the most fascinating aspects of Indian dynasties was the way of life of the royal family, particularly their perspectives on male concubines. A peculiar and fascinating aspect of Indian court culture was keeping a harem of male concubines. Although the concept of concubines was not exclusive to that nation, the Khawas, or Nayak, who lived in the royal palace with the Monaco Prince, existed. This bizarre way of life offers a glimpse into the varied and complex cultural customs that previously ruled the Indian court. In this video, we'll delve into the fascinating history of Indian emperors and their interesting traditions when it comes to male concubines, Indian kingdoms and their male concubines. Several Indian kingdoms, particularly the Mughal Empire, which governed India from the early 16th to the middle of the late 19th century, were aware of male concubines as part of their custom. Historical accounts and artwork produced at the time can provide insights into this peculiar manner of life, which involved maintaining a harem made up of male concubines. The Mughal Emperor Jahangir was famed for keeping concubines by his side. Jahangir's harem of male concubines was composed of young men from varied socio-economic backgrounds, destinies, and ethnic backgrounds. Some of these concubines were chosen for their beauty and intelligence, and they were educated and trained in a variety of fields. While Jahangir did not discriminate, tales would confirm that the emperor preferred male concubines. In fact, it was said that Jahangir had a favorite male concubine named Malik Ambar. Malik Ambar is Ethiopian, and Jahangir was astounded by Malik Ambar's mastery of the bow, as well as by his intelligence and excellent appearance. Numerous historical accounts claim that Jahangir and Malik Ambar were close friends, and that Malik Ambar was even given a prominent position in his court because the emperor favored him so much. Another tale of the same nature can be found in the Maratha monarch Peshwa Bajirao court. According to historical accounts, these Bakaras were young men chosen for their beauty and charm, and were trained in dancing, music, and other skills. Books would also mention how these Bakaras were also talented in many different arts. The Bakaras also received royal treatment while residing in the Peshwat's palace, and were looked after by a staff of attendants. They received the most luxurious clothing, jewelry, food, and wine, and they wore pricey accessories. But this didn't mean they were kept like fragile vases inside the palace, because aside from serving their masters, they fought in battles alongside the Peshawar and went on hunting episode outings. Thus, we can all agree that being a male concubine during the early empires in India required more than just brain and beauty. Male concubines in Indian arts and literature. Additionally, there is evidence of this interesting manner of life in the literary and artistic creations of the time. For instance, the 18th century miniature painting titled Jahangir and Malik Ambar featured Jahangir and Malik Ambar. In the painting, the attendant is shown holding a parasol over the emperor's head in the painting, while others observe from the background. This artistic representation of their story is a tangible confirmation that once in the earliest era of India lived an emperor and his most favored male concubine. The poet and philosopher Emir Khusro, who lived in the 13th and 14th centuries, also covered the practice of maintaining a harem with male concubines in his writings. In one of his poems, he talks about an attractive young man who was kept as a concubine by a wealthy businessman at the time. The poem presents the young man as a valuable and sought-after item that many people want. His writing also mentioned how the harem of male concubines was an integral part of the social and cultural fabric of Indian kingdoms for hundreds of years. This was even though it may sound strange and exotic to modern sensibilities. Harems were widespread during that time, and since it was seen as a sign of wealth and power, many kings and nobles engaged in the custom. Queers in ancient India. Ancient art and literature also contain evidence that will confirm the existence of this practice. At the same time, these art and literature provide proof that both humans and yakshas recognized gender diversity in ancient India, and it's no surprise that queerness is prevalent throughout Indian history, from the ancient epics and scriptures to the literature, poetry, art, and architecture of the Middle Ages. The examples that follow highlight how common homosexuality is and how homoeroticism is tolerated in India. Lord Hanuman reportedly saw Rakshasa women kissing and hugging women as he went from Lanka to India after visiting the goddess Sita. This was according to the Ramayana of Valmiki. The story claims that King Dilip had 2 wives and died without leaving an heir. After that, Lord Shiva appeared in the queen's dreams and said that if they made love to one another, they would have a child. Following the instructions, one of the grieving queens got pregnant and ultimately gave birth to King Bhagidatta, and the Ganga from heaven was said to have been brought to earth by this well-known king. In the Mahabharata, Shikandi, the murderer of Devarajma, is mentioned. She was raised as a man despite being King Durpad of Bath's daughter. Later in life, she turned into a man with the help of Yaksha to confront Bhishma on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. But this is not all. In another story found in the Matsya Purana, Lord Vishnu transforms into the gorgeous Mohini. He intended to trick the demons so that the gods would drink all the holy water. After seeing Mohini, Lokiva fell in love with her, and as a result of their coupling, Lord Ayappa was born. At the same time, the infamous Kama Sutra also mentioned a few things about homosexuality during ancient India. Specifically, in Chapter 9 of the Kama Sutra, Vatsayana discusses homosexuality and other sexual conduct known as aparishtika, and sexual behavior among transgender individuals. The chapter also mentions Spirulini, a strong-willed and independent woman who engaged in sexual intercourse with other women. On top of this, the book also mentions males who are drawn to others of the same gender, which served as another confirmation that such practice was very popular back in the days. Harems and male concubines. Did you know that the founder of the Mughal Empire was attracted to both sexes? Yes, he was. In his memoir, Babur discusses his fascination with a young boy named Baburi in Kabul. The poetry was written by Babur, who also used his own name in the autobiography. Several Sufi poems also contain homoerotic or same-sex references. For instance, in his works, Sufi saints portrayed traditional views on sexuality and religion. This poetry demonstrated his adaptability and his love for Shah Inayat. The lifestyle of male concubines had a big impact on the historical traditions in art and culture. Many of these concubines regularly performed for the court and had formal instruction in dance, singing, and other arts. They were depicted in literature and the arts, and their existence and the influence they had on court culture are important aspects of Indian history that should be recognized and further examined. The history of having a harem of male concubines must also be mentioned because these men were frequently kidnapped from lower social classes and made to live lives of servitude and objectification. This tradition was also associated with power struggles and exploitation. In order to understand such practice, it is crucial to examine and comprehend the nuances and complexity of it within the context of its historical development, as well as to acknowledge the resulting violations of human rights. The lifestyle of male concubines was an exciting aspect of court life in Indian empires, which had a significant impact on Indian history and culture. Because complex activities reflect the power dynamics and cultural norms of the time, it is critical to assess them in the context of their historical evolution. The practice of maintaining a harem with male concubines was not unique to India. Instead, it has roots in other antiquated cultures like Greece and Rome. However, in India, it took on a distinct personality and became deeply ingrained with the social, cultural, and religious customs of the time. The prevalent belief that a ruler's attendance was closely correlated with his level of virility and masculinity was one of the reasons it was customary for kings and princes to keep male concubines. Because it was often highly expensive to maintain and care for these male concubines, having more women in a ruler's harem conveyed the idea that the emperor was more vigorous and forceful. It was also a symbol of social status and prosperity. Not to mention how the belief that a deity who was both male and female was divinely androgynous contributed to the practice. The acceptance of male concubines in court life may have been influenced by this belief in the divine synthesis of masculine and feminine attributes. To conclude, the lifestyles of male concubines in Indian kingdoms were a unique and complex practice that reflected the time's power, dynamics, and cultural standards. Even though it had a huge impact on Indian culture and the arts and was an integral part of court life, there was still a stigma associated with people who were involved. Understanding the nuances, complexities, historical relevance, and associated human rights violations of this practice is crucial. And at the end of the day, the fact remains. Sometime in the history of India, male concubines existed, and they are an integral part of the society and colorful culture of the country. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to give this a like and subscribe for more stories from history.